Israel is bone dry. Farms fail. Wells turn to dust. Then Elijah shows up. He looks the king in the eye and says, "No rain until I speak." The sky slams shut. Fire falls. Every fake god falls with it. But Elijah also fights fear and long, lonely silence. What really happened in those hidden years? Stay with me. His story will light a spark in your own dry days. The prophet with no address. He has no pedigree, no parchment resume, not even a village to claim him. Elijah, the Tishbite, simply strides out of the untamed hills, more rumor than resident, wearing camel hair that still smells of campfire smoke. In Israel's registries, Tishbe barely earns a footnote. To most mapmakers, it's an empty patch of scrub. Yet this nobody arrives carrying somebody's name. El-Y with Makronach, my God is Yahweh. In ancient culture, a name is destiny, a tattoo on the soul. And Elijah's destiny, it seems, is to become a walking rebuttal to every idol that clutters the land. Picture Israel in that moment. Crops ripening under Mediterranean sun, children laughing by village wells, everything outwardly thriving. But inside the palace, King Ahab signs treaties with Tyre and Sidon, importing wealth and their gods. Baal, the stormbringer. Asherah, lady of fertility. Sturdy wooden poles spring up on every hilltop. Incense climbs skyward while Yahweh's altars crumble like forgotten graves. National identity corrodes, one compromise at a time. So why would the living God pick an uncredentialed frontiersman to confront royal apostasy? Maybe because an outsider can speak truth with no strings attached. Or maybe, just maybe, because the wilderness forges the kind of backbone marble halls rarely do. Out among the cedars, you learn the art of waiting. Waiting for clouds to gather, for prey to wander near, for night temperatures to fall so you can finally sleep. Waiting trains the tongue to be silent until words really matter. When Elijah finally opens his mouth, creation itself will obey. But right now he walks, listens, prays, repeats. As sunset bleeds across the sky, he rehearses the decree he'll soon hurl at the most powerful man in the kingdom. No dew, no rain, not a droplet until I say so. It sounds insane, like threatening a river with thirst. Yet the wilderness has taught Elijah two simple lessons. God is real, and bold obedience outranks polished credentials every time. Knights in Gilead teach survival by syllables. Would spark flame, sheep predator slay. In that syllabus, reliance on Baal's storm blessings is laughable. Clouds arrive, or don't, without priestly coaxing. Elijah learns instead to read the whisper signs of Yahweh. The sudden hush before wind, the timing of migrating ravens, the way fresh grass pokes through after a single, well-placed shower. Each observation is a line in an unfolding love letter between creator and creation. Could this be why God chooses a wilderness watcher to confront Israel's weather god? Because you can't unmask a counterfeit unless you've handled a real thing? The trek from Tishbe to Samaria is roughly 25 miles, but psychologically, it's a leap from obscurity to open core drama. Every mile, Elijah's sandals kick up dust that will soon turn to powder across the entire kingdom. Does he second-guess his mission? Probably. Even iron nerves quiver when the outcome could starve millions. Yet the command is clear. Go. Speak. Seal the skies. And here's the irony. Locking heaven is the most loving thing God can do, because sometimes a parched throat listens better than a full stomach. Samaria smells of new money and old compromise. Vendors hawk Phoenician dyes. Soldiers polish bronze chariots imported on Sidonian trade routes. Everywhere you look, Baal's lightning emblem hangs like stylish graffiti on banners, belt buckles, even toddlers' clay toys. The cult's public relations team is crushing it. And in the swirl of commerce stands the royal fortress. Limestone towers glowing honey gold in afternoon light, archways engraved with lotus patterns, cedar doors taller than battlefield giants. Security? Top tier. Spearmen at every portico, watchmen pacing parapets. Yet none of them has protocols for a desert nomad wielding nothing but a promise from God. He doesn't announce himself. He doesn't even bow. He simply walks, left, right, left, past bewildered guards whose spears drop an inch too late. Was it sheer audacity that paralyzed them, or an unseen force clearing the path? Hard to say, but here's the detail every eyewitness later remembers. The air turned unervingly still, as if the palace itself were holding its breath. Past colonnades of carved idols, past courtiers in imported linen, Elijah steps into the throne room. King Ahab reclines on an ivory seat, a crown of hammered gold catching stray beams of sun. Jezebel lounges nearby, fingers absent-mindedly tracing the arm of her ornate chair. Queen, priestess, political power broker. Two monarchs, hundreds of onlookers, one dusty prophet. Ratio? Terrible. Odds? Worse. And yet, Elijah's voice slices the stillness like flint on steel. As surely as the Lord, the God of Israel, lives, whom I serve, there will be neither dew nor rain in the next few years except at my word. He says no more. No commentary, no negotiation. One sentence detonates the storm god's reputation in the heart of his own fan club. Then Elijah turns on his heel and exits before the royal brain trust even finds its collective tone. What has happened? Ahab's jaw hangs open. Jezebel's eyes narrow into lethal slits. Somewhere outside, a single cloud evaporates as if taking orders. And that's where the saga of drought and destiny truly begins. The city has no idea it's already dying. Merchants keep haggling, priests keep chanting, but the humidity meter just slid to zero and won't climb back for 3 long years. Elijah feels that unseen hinge click as he passes the outer gate. Every instinct screams, run, hide. Royal sword will be after you by sundown. Yet another voice, deeper than adrenaline, whispers, trust me. I close the sky. I'll open the escape routes. He heads for solitude, not celebration. No ticker tape parade awaits prophets who crash economies. And the irony? The first throat that will taste drought is his own. That realization might crush a lesser messenger. But wilderness people carry light packs. He shoulders the consequence and keeps moving. By dusk, he reaches a dry ravine overlooking the Jordan Valley. Shadows stretch like black arrows across cracked earth. He shivers, a different kind of chill, the holy dread that often precedes a revelation. Sure enough, the inner whisper returns, clear as thunder. Go eastward and hide by the brook Cherith. Drink from its stream. I've sent ravens to feed you there. Ravens? Unclean scavengers? God's catering service has odd taste. Yet isn't that trademark Yahweh? Using unlikely couriers to keep a promise alive? Elijah exhales, half laugh, half prayer. Tomorrow he'll trek deeper into terra incognita, where black wings will deliver breakfast and supper, where each sunrise will rehearse the same silent sermon. If I can command birds, I can command droughts and destinies. Storming the palace. Before sunrise, King Ahab's court already hums. Scribes sharpen reed pens. Priests of Baal rehearse chants that promise rain none of them can manufacture. Outside, market vendors lay out baskets of figs still wet with night dew that will soon vanish forever. On an upper balcony, Queen Jezebel watches the sky fade from indigo to pale gold, lips curling into the faintest smile. Each new idol erected is another thread severed from Israel's ancient covenant, and she is the tailor of that unraveling. Inside the throne room, ivory panels reflect torchlight onto mural scenes of Baal, striking lightning into fertile fields. Those paintings feel almost mocking now. The past few weeks have delivered heat without storms, a subtle omen no one in power wishes to decode. Ahab fidgets on his throne, drumming jeweled fingers against cedar armrests. He's a ruler who inherited a kingdom and married an empire, or perhaps it married him. Jezebel's homeland, Sidon, dwarfs Israel in sea trade, bronze smelting, and propaganda. She supplies the priests, the economic alliances, even the decorative artists who line the palace halls. Ahab supplies the signature at the bottom of every decree. In strides Elijah. No herald, no gift, no scheduled audience. Dust streaks his cloak. Wild hair frames eyes that blaze like lit coal. The contrast is comic and terrifying. A lone mountain man crossing carpets woven for foreign dignitaries. 2 guards rush forward, spears half raised, then stop, paralyzed. Was it the glare in Elijah's eyes, or did an unseen hand press pause on their courage? Either way, a silent corridor opens for him, and no practiced ceremony can stitch it closed. Jezebel's smile freezes. She recognizes a threat, not political, but existential. Ahab leans forward, eyebrows nodding. Who let this madman in? Elijah's boots halt on polished stone just short of the dais. Without bowing, without even clearing his throat, he unleashes a single sentence that will haunt every banquet, every budget meeting, every midnight dream for years to come. As surely as Yahweh, The living God of Israel lives. There will be neither dew nor rain these next years except at my word. Period. No footnotes. You can almost hear the mural gods on the wall gasp. Ahab's mouth drops open. Jezebel's knuckles whiten around her scepter. Servants hold silver trays mid-stride, unsure whether to kneel or flee. Somewhere above the rafters, a pigeon coos, the only creature in the hall, still unafraid to make a sound. Then Elijah turns and walks away. That's it. No exit strategy, no armed escort. Just a prophet sprinting the most audacious trust fall ever attempted, banking on Yahweh to slam the palace gates shut behind him before assassins regain their senses. Moments later, outside the palace, a flag bearing Baal's thunderbolt emblem sags on a windless pole, as if the heavens themselves refuse to exhale. An hour passes, no royal decree yet, but everyone senses the air has changed. Literally, the usual morning coolness evaporates, as though the sun flipped a secret switch. Tent fabrics sag, perfumers fan spice carts, eyes darting skyward for clouds that refuse to form. Word leaks fast. A ragged prophet predicted a sky lockdown in the king's own court. Some laugh it off, Baal will fix it. Some whisper the old stories about a desert god who once split seas and toppled walls. And some, mostly mothers filling jars at the well, touch the surface of the water as if memorizing the feel while it's still there. Inside the palace, chaos blooms. Ahab barks for astrologers, meteorologists, anyone handy with a weather chant. Jezebel's advisors suggest hauling in more priests from Sidon to turbocharge the next incense marathon. But Ahab isn't thinking ritual, he's thinking logistics. No rain means no harvest. No harvest means tax coffers shrivel like figs on the vine. His reputation, already shaky thanks to that ivory obsession, could crack wide open. He orders scouts, track the Tishbite. East-west, I don't care. Bring him back. Meanwhile, Elijah is miles away, a moving speck swallowed by the rolling hills. Ironically, the king's elite cavalry can't match a prophet guided by ravens and instinct. He cuts off main roads, zigzags through olive groves, and descends into the dry wadis that crisscross the Jordan Basin. Every footstep feels like a silent drumbeat of destiny. Seal the sky. Seal the sky. And with each step, the air behind him seems to wilt, as though creation itself acknowledges the verdict hanging overhead. No one knows it yet, but that last droplet marks the kingdom's final taste of humidity for 1,095 days. Wells will echo hollow. Priests will slice themselves in frantic pleas. Children will watch dust devils spin where rivers used to run. All because a lone voice dared to declare, "Until I say so." Elijah scrambles down a crumbling slope and nearly laughs. Cherith isn't much to look at. A thin ribbon of water glints between boulders, no wider than a shepherd's staff. Yet to a fugitive prophet it might as well be the Nile. He kneels, cups the cool stream, and drinks like a man memorizing the taste. Shelter? A tumble of overhanging rock forms a natural alcove. Furniture? A smooth stone serves as pillow, pulpit, and dining table in one. Dusk settles, and with it a hollow growl from his stomach. Then, whoosh, black wings slash overhead. Two ravens swoop down, dropping their cargo with surprising precision. Stale bread, a strip of goat meat, maybe pilfered from some unsuspecting cook fire miles away. Levitical law brands ravens unclean, but desperate times rewrite dinner etiquette. Elijah raises an eyebrow skyward. Really? Tap tap on palace doors one moment. 5-star room service from carrion birds the next. The irony tastes almost as rich as the meat. Days adopt a rhythm older than civilization itself. Sunrise, wing beats, bread, burning noon, silence, scripture meditation, sunset, wing beats, meat. Between deliveries, Elijah listens to the wind rustling tamarisk branches and senses a classroom in the canyon. Lesson 1. Provision can arrive wrapped in contradiction. Lesson 2. Hidden obedience is often louder in heaven than public miracles. Yet even miracles have timers. Week by week, the brook runs thinner, pulling back from its own banks like a retreating army. Pebbles that once glimmered underwater now bake in relentless sun. Elijah traces a fingertip along the shrinking waterline and feels the looming question tutored into every drop. When the brook dries, will you still trust the source? He answers by stacking another rock on his altar of quiet faith and watching the sky for ravens. The day always begins with wing beats before a hint of sunlight touches Cherith's crumbling ledges. Elijah feels them arrive before he opens his eyes. The subtle rush of displaced air, the muted click of talons on stone. Survival has tuned his senses into a living radar. He sits up, cloak brushing gravel, and there they are, two midnight silhouettes against a paling sky, each bearing breakfast like unscheduled couriers. One drops crusty bread, the other, a strip of cured meat. A week ago, he'd have called the combo an appetizer. Now it's proof the universe still has his mailing address. He mutters a word of thanks, half whispered, half sigh, and tears bread with cracked fingers. Stale crumbs taste surprisingly sweet when you've outsourced your grocery list to heaven's least likely delivery service. Funny, isn't it? Ravens rank with pigs and shellfish on Israel's do not eat roster, yet Yahweh chooses these very scavengers to keep a prophet alive. As Elijah chews, he studies the birds' dark eyes. Do they know they're part of a cosmic object lesson? Or are they simply following an irresistible tug in their instincts? Maybe obedience looks just as ordinary from the outside when humans do it. Monotony soon becomes its own wilderness. Wake, eat, pray, watch waterlines shrink. Repeat. The prophet fights not hunger, but restlessness. He sketches swirl patterns in dust, hums half-remembered psalms, even counts heartbeat intervals between raven landings. Anything to tether mind to purpose. Yet through the slow drip of identical days, he senses a deeper curriculum unfolding. Trust isn't only adrenaline-charged heroism. Sometimes it's the discipline of staying when everything in you wants to sprint toward the next miracle. Midday in Cherith feels like an X-ray. The sun peels away every illusion of control. Elijah crouches by the dwindling stream, tracing cracked mud with a thumb. Yesterday, the trickle still murmured. Today, it wheezes like an old man out of breath. How long before silence wins? He lifts a pebble, smooth, river-born, yet doomed to bleach under open sky, and places it atop his growing stack. One stone for every day the ravens came. The cairn now leans hip-high, a private calendar of faith. Time dilates in the canyon. Cicadas buzz like faulty wiring. Mirages dance above the valley floor. Memories wander in uninvited. The thunder of Jordan floods in springtime, laughter around campfires, the scent of rain-soaked earth. They feel almost fictional now, stories from someone else's life. He wonders, was Noah ever nostalgic for the world before the flood? Did Moses miss palace linen while herding stubborn sheep? Wilderness training often includes a unit on selective amnesia. Forget what anchors you to comfort, so you can grip what anchors you to calling. Easier said than lived. Late afternoon delivery arrives. Bread drier than parchment, meat salted stiff. Elijah studies the birds' labored breathing. Even scavengers suffer in a dehydrating world. He breaks the bread, offers half back to them. One raven tilts its head, as if confused by reverse generosity, then snatches the morsel and launches skyward. Kindness in famine, a quiet rebellion against scarcity's creed of take first. He smiles. Small mercies feel like secret passwords to bigger miracles. Night descends, bringing brief relief. Elijah lies on his stone pillow, cloak pulled to chin, eyes tracing constellations. Somewhere beyond those pinpricks of light, the same God who programs raven flight paths also choreographs drought timelines. A thought surfaces unbidden. What if the brook dries completely before new orders arrive? The human brain loves contingency plans, yet faith often cancels plan B to keep plan A sharp. He exhales, as if unloading the question into the cool night air. Stars keep their counsel. Heaven remains radio silent. But silence doesn't equal absence. A lesson hammered into prophets with the patience of a master jeweler shaping gold. The day the brook finally dies, it does so without spectacle. No hiss, no steam, just a quiet resignation. Elijah kneels, scoops a handful of dust, and lets it sift through his fingers. The gesture feels like a funeral for certainty. 3 years of prophecy have reached his doorstep, and the paycheck is an empty riverbed. He glances skyward. Well, Lord, you did warn me. Still, part of him had hoped for a last-minute trickle, a mercy drizzle, anything to stretch the miracle one more sunrise. Thirst nips the edges of his throat. He could chase the raven's flight path in hopes of locating their water source. But that isn't what obedience looks like today. Instead, he sits on a stone altar, steadying breath, cataloging the facts. 1. Skies still shut. 2. Brook's gone. 3. God's character hasn't shifted an inch. The math is simple, but not easy. Trust plus 0 options equals fresh instructions, or a new kind of faith. The wind stills, and in its hush a voice lands, soft yet unmistakable. Arise. Go to Zarephath of Sidon and stay there. I have commanded a widow to supply you with food. Zarephath? Enemy territory. Jezebel's backyard barbecue pit for prophets. Sending Elijah there feels like mailing a sheep to a wolf convention and hoping the hors d'oeuvres menu changes hearts. He tugs at his beard, weighing risk against the familiar cadence of divine clarity. One outweighs the other. He stands. Every trek begins with one decision: forward. He leaves the cairn untouched, a monument to days when heaven's faithfulness dripped in bite-sized portions. Ahead lies a coastline city soaked in idolatry, a widow on the brink of starvation, and the next jaw-dropping chapter of impossible provision. Behind him, ravens circle once, perhaps confused their GPS delivery zone has moved, then peel off toward distant cliffs. Elijah doesn't look back. Droughts, doubts, and dried-up streams are best left as prologues, not destinations. He walks in a heat that could blister resolve, yet each mile hums with a subtle promise. Where scarcity ends, new supply begins. And somewhere beyond that horizon, flour jars are waiting to refill themselves, oil pitchers to defy arithmetic, and a grieving mother to discover hope wears dusty sandals. A widow's last supper. Sand crunches under every step, but Elijah's mind marches faster than his feet. Northward, past abandoned wells, skeletal orchards, and villages where shutters bang in a hungry wind. Sidon territory looms ahead, homeland of Jezebel, factory of Baal worship, the very furnace stoking Israel's idolatry. Why here, Lord? He wonders, wiping grit from his beard. The answer hides somewhere between trust and terror. Mid-journey, a mirage shimmers to life. Memories of fresh water lapping at Cherith stones, ravens banking against sunrise. They feel years away, yet the rhythm of provision still drums in his pulse. Every so often he rubs the empty water skin slung at his waist, a tactile reminder that obedience sometimes walks on fumes. As afternoon light tilts west, the coastline city of Zarephath finally appears, more ghost than metropolis. Its once bustling harbor stands motionless. Fishing boats rest on dry sand like whales stranded by a vanishing tide. Beyond the gate, alleyways echo with hollow silences where market cries used to bounce. Poverty isn't new here, but drought has transformed hardship into slow bankruptcy. Elijah pauses beneath a cracked archway crowned with pagan carvings, serpents twisting around lightning bolts. A sign reads, House of Melkart, wine and oil exchange, letters flaking off as if ashamed. The prophet squares his shoulders. Somewhere in this foreign maze, a widow is down to her last crumb and waiting for a stranger who can't promise anything except impossible hope. Just outside the gate, he spots her. A frail figure stoops to gather brittle sticks, 2, 3, then pauses to rest shaky fingers on her knees. Threadbare shawl, sunken cheeks, eyes the color of oversteeped tea. Yet in that gaunt silhouette, Elijah senses the faint hum of divine appointment, the way metal shivers near a hidden magnet. Would you bring me a little water? His voice is calm, almost apologetic, as though he's interrupting her private grief. She blinks. No one requests water these days without offering coin, and he carries nothing but roadwear. Still, her dignity outweighs scarcity. She nods and turns toward what's left of the town's communal cistern. Just as she lifts the jar, he calls after her, and, please, a piece of bread in your hand. The request floats like a careless feather, yet it lands with the weight of an anvil. She pivots, clutching the jar to her chest, eyes wet with alarmed disbelief. As Yahweh your God lives, she whispers, voice fraying, I have no loaf, only a handful of flour, a little oil. I'm gathering sticks so my son and I may eat, then die. Don't be afraid, Elijah replies, stepping closer. Do as you said, but first bake a small cake for me. Afterward, make some for you and your son. For Yahweh, the God of Israel, promises the jar of flour will not run out, the jug of oil will not dry up until he sends rain again. A pause. Time seems to hold its breath, while logic wrestles with faith inside her eyes. Bread for a stranger means one fewer mouthful for a boy. Yet something in Elijah's tone, weary yet unwavering, sounds like the truth her soul has been starving for. She nods, more surrender than agreement, and motions him toward her humble doorway. Inside, the room smells of smoke and stale air. She tips the flour jar, expecting dust, and gasps. Soft white powder spills out, enough for a full loaf. Oil glugs thickly from a jug she thought empty yesterday. Elijah closes his eyes in quiet gratitude. The lesson of ravens now graduates to pantry miracles. Days settle into a gentle miracle. Each dawn, the widow reaches for the jar with a tentative breath. Flour slides out like sifted snow. Oil coats the bowl's sides in a golden swirl. Elijah can't help but grin every time. The sight never grows ordinary. He tells stories of Gilead evenings under cedar skies. The boy giggles when Elijah mimics raven caws. For 3 souls stitched together by scarcity, this modest kitchen becomes a sanctuary humming with enough. Outside, Zarephath remains a husk. Fishermen patch empty nets, while temple minstrels pluck harps to idols that won't answer. Yet inside the clay walls, hope rises with the smell of fresh flatbread. The widow begins humming again, fragmented lullabies she thought she'd buried with her dreams. Sometimes she flicks flour at her son's chin, and for a flicker-long moment, the world feels normal. Then one afternoon, laughter turns to wheezing. The boy's cheeks flush deep crimson, eyes losing their sparkle. Elijah tries honey water, cool cloths, silent prayer. Fever climbs anyway, relentless as drought. By nightfall, breaths become shallow sips. By dawn, they vanish altogether. She rounds on Elijah, grief blazing into accusation. Did you come to expose my sin and slaughter my child? Her voice cracks the silence like shattered pottery. Elijah's own heart splinters. He has no easy answer. Instead, he gathers the small, limp body into trembling arms. He lays the boy on his mat, the same mat where he's whispered psalms of gratitude night after night. Now he kneels beside it, grief twisting words before they form. Outside, the city groans under cloudless sky, yet inside these 4 walls another, deeper drought drains hope drop by drop. Elijah draws a breath, so sharp it seems to cut his throat. Then, voice raw, he breaks the heavenly silence. Yahweh, my God, have you brought tragedy on this widow by letting her son die? The question floats unanswered in the heat-thick air. He lowers himself over the child, arms outstretched, as though trying to shield fragile life from the dust of death. And there we pause, between heartbeat and miracle, between despair and whatever God might do next. Elijah's forehead touches the mat. Dust grains grind into his skin, but he barely feels them. Every nerve fires in intercession. Arms trembling, he lifts his gaze to the rafters as though the ceiling might part. Yahweh, my God, he pleads, voice cracking. Let this child's life return, please. The last word escapes as a hoarse whisper, yet reverberates like thunder in the hush. Silence. Then a single droplet of sweat slides off Elijah's brow onto the boy's still cheek, a futile baptism against death. The prophet's mind flashes back. Ravens on schedule, flour that never dwindled. Surely the God who multiplied calories can multiply heartbeats. He draws a deep breath, stretches himself over the child, warm chest to cold chest, hope to hopelessness, and counts the boy's ribs with trembling fingers. 1, 2, 3. Each contact feels like striking flint against flint, begging for a spark. He pulls back, eyes scanning the tiny face for movement. Nothing. The widow's muffled sob echoes up the stairwell, slicing the stillness like a shard of glass. Elijah's own doubt sours his mouth. What if heaven says no this time? But faith, seasoned by solitude and drought, elbows doubt aside. He lowers himself again, breath mingling with the boy's halted exhale. Yahweh, life, return. He murmurs between clenched teeth, as if forcing the words through stubborn stone. Again he presses chest to chest, palms spread across the boy's ribs as though planting seeds in barren soil. Yahweh, breathe. His voice drops to a rasp, equal parts command and plea. For a heartbeat, the room feels suspended outside of time. No widow's sobs, no whir of insects outside, only the electric ache of a universe deciding. Then, subtle as dawn, the child's nostrils flare. A whisper-thin sip of air slips past pale lips. Elijah jerks upright, disbelief and joy collided. Another breath, stronger this time, lifts the boy's sternum. Eyes flutter open, unfocused at first, then locking on the prophet's astonished face. Elijah's knees buckle in relief. He lifts trembling hands skyward, murmuring thanks that tumble out as half laughter, half sob. Gathering the child gently, he descends the narrow stairs. Each footfall echoes like a drum announcing victory. The widow stands rooted by the hearth, tear-stained and hollow-eyed. When Elijah crosses the threshold, she clutches the lintel for support. He kneels, places the living boy in her arms, and whispers, "See, your son is alive." Tears of grief transform into cries of wonder. "Now I know," she breathes, voice quavering, "that you are a man of God and that the word of Yahweh from your mouth is truth." In that fragile kitchen, faith germinates, nurtured not by flour and oil this time, but by breath restored. Outside, the sky remains brass-hard, yet inside these humble walls, a downpour of hope drenches 3 hearts. And somewhere beyond the horizon, drought's countdown ticks a little louder, inching toward its fiery climax on Mount Carmel. He inhales damp coastal air, faint brine riding a breeze that hasn't carried rain in 3 years. Yet the smell of the sea reminds him that boundaries exist only where God allows them. Water stops at shoreline. Death stops at Yahweh's command. He closes his eyes, letting the moment brand itself onto memory, evidence he'll need when the next wave of doubt creeps in. Inside, the widow cradles her son, rocking gently. The boy's fingers curl into her sleeve, as though afraid life might drift away again. Elijah hears their hushed voices, hers a hymn of gratitude, his a child's curious chirp. "Mama, why are you crying and smiling?" The prophet smiles too. Some questions deserve nothing but embrace as the answer. Days stretch into weeks, each one stitched with small mercies. The flour jar never dips, the oil jug never clots. But news drifting up the coast is grim. Wells in Tyre have collapsed, Sidon's grain reserves now guarded by soldiers. And in Israel, Ahab's search parties scour every ravine for the runaway prophet blamed for heaven's lockdown. Rumors say the king has vowed to execute Elijah on sight. Jezebel is rumored to keep a dagger under her pillow for the pleasure herself. Yet none of that storms this humble home. Here, faith beats drought at its own game. Elijah realizes that sometimes the loudest miracles are whispered in kitchens, not shouted from mountaintops. A subtle tug returns to his spirit, the same pull that once led him from Gilead to Samaria and then to Cherith. Destiny is stirring again, like embers reigniting beneath ash. Soon, obedience will trade the security of daily bread for the peril of public confrontation. Lightning will answer prayer. Nations will hold their breath. But for tonight, he lets the widow's gentle lullaby drift upward, mingling with starlight. He whispers a single line, half promise, half prophecy. Rain has a schedule, and so does justice. Ahab's manhunt is now a national sport. Royal decrees plaster city gates. Wanted, Elijah the Tishbite. Rewards escalate from sacks of silver to entire vineyards. Still, no one can pin down a prophet who travels under cover of obedience. Caravans whisper of a cloaked stranger seen near Jericho, only to find he vanished at dawn. Shepherds swear ravens talk to him, then produce nothing but feathers as proof. Every false lead deepens the king's frustration until his temper scorches hotter than the drought itself. Inside the palace war room, once a banquet hall, maps sprawl under flickering lamplight. Ahab slams his fist, rattling goblets long emptied for lack of wine harvests. "Search again," he growls, voice rough as sandpaper. "If we have to sift every grain of dust, we will drag that troublemaker back." Jezebel, reclining like a coiled serpent, merely arches a brow. She prefers daggers to shouting. Meet Obadiah, palace logistics genius by day, covert prophet protector by night. While Ahab signs edicts, Obadiah reroutes grain rations to 2 secret caves, keeping 100 hunted men of God alive on black market bread and spring water. His double life hangs on a hairbreadth of divine timing. One wrong slip, an overordered bag of flour, a careless glance at a cave entrance, and Jezebel's assassins would trace the whole network. Now drought bites so deep that even royal stables echo with hollow troughs. Horses whinny in thirst. Prized war steeds look more like scarecrows than cavalry. Ahab bursts into the courtyard, dust swirling around his boots. "Obadiah," he shouts, "ride south with me. We'll scour every valley for grass before the last stallion collapses." The steward's stomach knots. Leaving palace walls means losing cover. Yet refusal equals suspicion. He bows, masking dread beneath protocol, and mounts up. Hours drag on. The only green glimpsed all day is a stubborn patch of thorn bush. Ahab curses skyward and veers west, while Obadiah branches east, glad for distance from volatile loyalty. He reins in near a dusty trail, dismounts to rest his steed, and freezes. A lone silhouette stands ahead, staff planted in earth like an exclamation mark. Wind flutters a tattered cloak. Sun glare masks the face, but the outline is unmistakable. Obadiah's throat dries faster than any brook. Elijah, Obadiah drops to his knees, face inches from sun-baked ground. My lord Elijah, is it really you? His voice wobbles between reverence and raw panic. The prophet steps forward, sweat beads trace lines down a weather-cracked face. It is I, he answers, tone gentle but unyielding. Go, tell your master, Elijah is here. Fear drills into Obadiah's spine. Have I sinned, he whispers, that you hand me over to death? Ahab has searched every kingdom. If I tell him you're here and the spirit carries you elsewhere, he'll kill me. His confession spills out. How he hid 100 prophets in twin caves, ferried bread and water through enemy checkpoints. How every dawn he dreads discovery. The words tumble desperate, like water breaching a crumbling dam. Elijah listens, eyes softening. As Yahweh of hosts lives, I will present myself to Ahab today. The vow lands like an immovable cornerstone. Obadiah feels its weight and its shelter at once. He exhales, shoulders slumping as tension drains. No more hiding, Elijah adds. The drought's verdict is nearly read. Tell the king to summon Israel to Mount Carmel. Every prophet of Baal, every voice of Asherah. The time for double-mindedness is over. His words carry the finality of closing gates. They also carry a spark of daring hope. Obadiah rises, dusting sand from ropes. For a heartbeat, steward and prophet lock eyes. Two covert allies finally standing in daylight. Then Obadiah turns, vaults into the saddle, and pounds west, the echo of hooves fading into scorched silence. Elijah grips his staff and starts walking. The same staff that once pointed heavenward in palace halls, the same worn wood that felt river spray at Cherith and braced his weight on Sidon's rocky trails. Each step toward Samaria feels like tightening bowstring, tension stored for a single, flaming arrow of revelation. Behind him, drought still chews the landscape. Ahead, a battlefield of altars waits. Somewhere in between, Ahab will have to choose which voice he fears more, the hiss of Jezebel's fury or the roar of a silent God about to speak in fire. Showdown on Mount Carmel. Morning breaks, and the mountain looks as if two nations have convened for a trial. On the western slope, 450 prophets of Baal gleam in embroidered crimson, gold amulets clinking with every swagger. Farther back cluster 400 prophets of Asherah, their sea-green robes rippling like waves against sun-baked rock. King Ahab's royal litter rests beneath a makeshift canopy, its cushions dusty, its owner restless. Nearby, Jezebel's empty seat gapes like a threat. She doesn't need to witness the duel to punish the loser. Israel's ordinary folk pack every ledge and ledge shadow. Farmers with calloused hands, merchants gone from drought, shepherd boys swinging empty slings. They've trekked days for one reason, to see which deity can still bleed power out of a bone-dry sky. Meanwhile, soldiers line the perimeter, spears angled, though no one is sure whether they guard the king or cage the crowd. He reaches the basalt plateau that crowns Carmel and stops. No herald announces him. No guards escort him. Still, the sea of onlookers parts as though learning reverence by instinct. Cloak flaps in the wind, streaked with travel dust and flour from a widow's kitchen. Face weather-lined yet unbent. Eyes reflecting a storm still hidden behind cobalt sky. He scans the multitude, and his voice rolls out. Hoarse from wilderness silence, yet razor clear. How long will you waver between two opinions? If Yahweh is God, follow him. If Baal, follow him. Echoes ricochet down ravines. No one answers. Not Ahab, not the priests, not the thirsty crowd. Shame tastes metallic on their tongues. I am the only prophet of Yahweh left, he continues, eyes locking on Baal's entourage. But Baal's prophets are 450. Bring 2 bulls. You choose first. Prepare your altar, but do not light the fire. I will do the same with the other bull. Then call on your God. I will call on Yahweh, the deity who answers with fire. He is God. A murmur ripples across the crowd, equal parts excitement and dread. Fire? In a flame-starved land that hasn't seen lightning in years? The prophets of Baal exchange nervous smirks, yet pride elbows caution aside. They motion to butchers, skinning knives flash. Elijah steps back, arms folded, the very picture of patience. Somewhere above, a lone dust devil pirouettes across the plateau, then dies. The sun climbs, unblinking. Morning stretches toward noon. Priests leap, spin, lash themselves with thorn branches, bodies streaked red where skin once shone. Their chants mutate into hoarse shrieks. Blood drips on a dry wood that stubbornly refuses to ignite. Sunlight nails the plateau like a branding iron, yet no cloud, spark, or breeze stirs above. Elijah watches, expression unreadable. Finally, he cups hand to mouth and calls over the commotion, voice dripping with theatrical concern. Shout louder. He is a god, isn't he? Maybe he's deep in thought, or busy. Could be traveling. Perhaps he's sleeping. Wake him. The taunt tips frenzy into madness. Priests answer Elijah's sarcasm by carving deeper. Rivers of blood run across sun-bleached stone, pooling in cracks the drought once wiped. Drums pound faster, then falter as drummers sway from blood loss. Noon slides past. Shadows shrink to razor slits beneath feet. Still, no flame, no whisper, nothing. The silence begins to feel sentient, coiling around throats. Spectators shift, uneasy. Children cling to mother skirts. Old men dab sweat for brows. Even Ahab's bravado wilts under the unspoken verdict. A storm god who can't spark tinder is no match for a 3-year drought. Come near to me, he calls, inviting the crowd like a teacher gathering pupils. People inch closer, curiosity outweighing fear. Carefully, Elijah collects 12 stones, one for each tribe, rebuilding a forgotten altar of Yahweh that lies in ruins beside Baal's blood-slick stage. He layers wood, places the slain bull, then digs a trench wide enough to swallow gallons. Fill 4 large jars with water, he commands, and pour it on the offering. Gasps ripple. Water is liquid gold these days. But servants obey. Streams cascade over meat, wood, stones, and drip into the trench. Again, Elijah says. Then a third time, by the final dousing, everything is drenched. The trench brims like a moat around an island of faith. The stage is impossibly set, sodden sacrifice under a cloudless furnace sky. Elijah steps back, lifts eyes toward heaven, and the mountain holds its breath. He speaks just 53 Hebrew words. No gyrations, no blades, soft enough that those farthest front must lean in. Yahweh, God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known today that you are God in Israel, that I am your servant, and that I've done all this at your word. Answer me, Yahweh. Answer, so these people will know that you, Yahweh, are God, and that you are turning their hearts back again. Heat hits the crowd like a physical shove. Faces blanch, hair singes at the fringe. The flame devours flesh, wood, stones, yes, even the stones, powdering them to vapor in seconds. Water in the trench flashes in a steam that roars heavenward, twisting into a brief, blinding cyclone. When the brightness fades, nothing remains but a scorch mark etched into bedrock. For one heartbeat, Mount Carmel is mute. No chant, no gasp, just stunned paralysis. Then a wave of realization detonates. Yahweh is God. Mouths open, knees buckle. Voices rise in unison, raw, unrehearsed confession. Yahweh, he is God. The chant rolls down slopes, echoing off barren valleys like thunder promised, but long withheld. Seize them, Elijah commands. The people, newly rallied, surge forward. Terror-struck priests stumble, tripping over discarded daggers. They're herded to the Wadi Kishon below, where covenant law meets its grim justice. Dust clouds rise. Baal's chorus is finally silent. Back atop the ridge, Ahab stands rooted, cloak whipping in a suddenly playful breeze. Elijah approaches, sweat and ash streaking his face, yet eyes alive with fierce calm. He leans close. Only the king hears the words, "Go, eat and drink, for there is the sound of heavy rain." Ahab's brow furrows. Sky above is still bronze. But somewhere on the wind rides a scent none have breathed in years. Petrichor, the earth's first exhale before a storm. Elijah turns toward the summit again. The next act of faith will involve crouched prayer and a servant scanning horizon 7 times. But that's a race we'll run in the coming chapter. For now, Carmel smolders under the memory of falling fire, and Israel, on its knees, waits for the sky to weep. Running before the storm, Ahab scrambles down the slope toward his royal pavilion, dazed, half-singed, clutching the miracle he just witnessed like a secret that might shatter if spoken aloud. Servants rush to unpack the king's emergency rations: dry figs, leathery goat jerky, 1 skin of dusty wine. Proof that royalty plans banquets even in famine. Elijah lets him go. The prophet has bigger business with the sky. He climbs back to the highest crest, drops to his knees, then folds forward until forehead meets stone, posture of a runner in starting blocks, except this race begins with prayer. Yahweh, open the heavens. The words are no louder than breath, but each syllable feels threaded with lightning. He signals his young servant, wide-eyed, panting from the earlier chaos. Go look toward the sea. The boy scrambles up a crag, hands shading eyes. Horizon, empty amber fading into indigo. He shakes his head. Elijah doesn't flinch. 7. The sacred cycle. Sometimes God paces miracles in rhythms that match creation's heartbeat. The prophet buries face in cloak again, muscles taut as bowstring. Second prayer, deeper, quieter, asking not just for clouds, but for a nation's repentance to soak into parched souls like rain into cracked furrows. Look again, he murmurs. The servant scales the rock once more. Nothing but gulls riding thermal currents. He returns, shrugging, uneasy. Third time, Elijah's posture unchanged. Fourth, still nothing. Nerves fray. Even the servant's sandals scuff more angrily against stone. Fifth climb, sixth climb, each report the same blank canvas. On the 7th ascent, the boy cups hands to mouth, voice pitching with startled hope. A cloud, master, small as a man's hand, rising from the sea. Elijah exhales, a sound between laugh and sigh of relief. A thumb-sized promise is enough. With Yahweh, seeds sprout storms. He stands, dusts off knees, and gathers cloak like a sprinter adjusting blocks. Elijah strides down to Ahab's pavilion. The king, lips purple from cheap wine, jerks upright as the prophet calls. Hitch your chariot and ride to Jezreel before the rain stops you. Servants throw nervous glances skyward. Only minutes ago the sky was brass. Now it boils ink black. They lunge into action. Wheels inspected, horses lashed, gilded canopy slammed shut. Ahab climbs aboard, uncertainty flickering across his face. Prophet and king briefly equalized by awe. Wind ramps from breeze to gale in 2 heartbeats, ripping through cedar staves like an invisible river. Elijah watches the royal convoy disappear down the mountain, then gathers his cloak, tucking hem into belt, a runner's knot. Lightning forks overhead, etching jagged glyphs across a sky now entirely consumed by storm. First drop, fat, cold, splats on the prophet's cheek. A grin stretches across weather-beaten lines. Heaven's faucet just broke. Then the downpour hits, monsoon-style sheets hammering rock, instantly transforming dust to slurry. Streams snake down ravines, gurgling like newborn rivers remembering their names. People shelter under cloaks, sudden laughter mixing with startled cries. For 3 years they've dreamed of this sound. Now it roars, so loud conversation must shout to survive. Something otherworldly seems to seize Elijah. Scripture calls it the hand of Yahweh. Muscles burn with fresh power. Cloak flares behind him like a banner. He descends Carmel's switchbacks, leaps washouts, and hits the valley floor already overtaking straggling horsemen. Mud splatters, lightning strobes. Each flash freezes the impossible tableau. Lone prophet outracing thoroughbreds. Miles blur. Olive groves whip past in watery smears. Village torches fizzle under deluge. Up ahead, Ahab's chariot lurches, wheels bogging in mud. Drivers whip frantic, horses shriek against choking mire. Elijah surges past on foot, a ghostly sprint illuminated by stormlight. Some soldiers swear they see flames dancing on his shoulders. Others claim wind parts around him like corridor. Myth is already planting roots even as reality races on. At Jezreel's outer gate, guard's gate. First at the prophet arriving soaked to the spine, then at the king's, sputtering convoy churning and several lengths behind. Elijah stops only when city walls loom, chest heaving vapor into rain-thick air. He wipes water from eyes and gazes skyward. Torrents still fall, yet deep within he senses a subtler forecast, one involving human tempers rather than weather fronts. Word of Carmel and the prophet's execution will reach her ears before dawn. The storm outside will be nothing compared to the royal tempest inside. Elijah's heart, still hammering from the run, flutters for a different reason. An unspoken question: what now, when fire and rain are not enough to melt a hardened throne? The Cave of Whispers. Victory's glow barely lasts the night. By dawn, Jezebel's riders thunder through mud to Elijah's quarters, parchment sealed in crimson wax. One line, smudged by rain, sears into his nerves. May the gods deal with me, be it ever so severely, if by this time tomorrow I do not make your life like one of them. Baal's dead prophets. The queen's oath is hotter than Carmel's flame. And as Old Testament scholar Walter Brueggemann reminds in 1st and 2nd Kings, interpretation 2000, Jezebel's threats always arrive cloaked in political authority and spiritual rage, a toxic mixture Elijah knows too well. Pulse spiking, the prophet bolts south before Jezreel's gates fully open, a lone servant clattering behind. They slog through flash flood gullies, scale slick ridges, and cross fig orchards dripping silver in post-storm dawn. By dusk, they reach Beersheba, Judah's frontier town, and centuries later, Leslie C. Allen will note in 2 Kings, WBC, 1988, that this 100-mile flight shows how fear can eclipse triumph when a prophet forgets to celebrate dependence on Yahweh. Elijah releases the servant. Whether mercy or self-preservation, he isn't sure, then plunges alone into the Negev wastes. Words spill raw. Enough, Lord. Take my life. I'm no better than my ancestors. It's not just despair. It's burnout described with surgical precision by F. W. Kromaker in Elijah the Tishbite, 1836. When the soul has wrestled with fire and flood, the quiet horror of loneliness often strikes the deepest wound. Elijah folds into the dust and blacks out. A gentle tap awakens him. An angel, no flaming sword, just luminous calm, offers water and a loaf still steaming. Get up and eat. He gulps star-cold water, devours bread sweet as honeycomb, then collapses again. A second tap. Same meal, same quiet directive. The journey will be too much for you. Brueggemann calls this scene God's theology of small mercies, provision that doesn't cancel the mission but prepares the exhausted servant to finish it. Fortified, Elijah treks 40 days and nights. Allen points out the echo, a second Sinai-style pilgrimage, linking prophet to covenant story. Sand crunches beneath blistered feet until basalt cliffs of Horeb wall off the horizon. The cave yawns, shadowy ribs and ancient stone, welcoming his battered body. A voice, gentler than Cherit's brook, asks, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" He unbuckles months of fear. Altars ruined, prophets murdered, himself alone and hunted. No rabutal comas. Only a summons. Stand on the mountain before Yahweh. First, a hurricane tears cliffs to shrapnel. Allen notes the Hebrew, literally, says the wind drove the rocks. A divine jolt Elijah might have once mistaken for presence. But Yahweh is absent. Next, the earth buckles. Sinai quake echoes through millennia. Still no voice. Then wildfire sweeps ridges, licking stone to glass. Silence. Kromaker writes that God withholds theatrics until the inner storm quiets enough to register a whisper. And then it comes, the sheer silence, or delicate whisper. A sound softer than spider silk that nonetheless recenters a life. Cloak over face, Elijah edges to the cave mouth. Same question, repeated. What are you doing here? He offers the same lament, but hearing it in the hush reveals the self-pity inside. Yahweh answers not with comfort, but commission. Return north. Anoint Hazael of Aram, Jehu of Israel, and Elisha to succeed you. Far from alone, 7,000 remain unbowed. Brueggemann calls this shift prophetic resurrection. God resurrects vocation before resurrecting circumstance. Allen adds that the new tasks will outlive Elijah, while Kromaker sees the whisper as proof that the Almighty prefers persuasion over pyrotechnics. Cloaks snapping in mountain wind, the prophet finally grasps the lesson. The same God who answers with fire also restores with silence. Ahead waits a farmer named Elisha, a flurry of miracles, and a whirlwind chariot, but those belong to another chapter. For now, Elijah stalks down, Sinai's spine lighter than when he fled, mantle tugging at shoulders like fresh wind, the whisper still threading pulse beats. Not wind, not fire, presence in quiet, legacy in a whirlwind. Elisha son of Shaphat wipes sweat with dusty sleeve, guiding the 12th pair of oxen, big, placid beasts whose hooves churn earth like slow thunder. Farming is muscle memory, push, steer, breathe. But today the air holds a static charge, as though thunderheads crouch just beyond vision. Without warning, a lone figure strides across the field, garments sun-bleached, eyes bright with purposes too large for acreage. Elijah. He says nothing, just slips his cloak from shoulders and drapes it across Elisha's back. The gesture speaks louder than Sinai trumpets. You're next. Elisha freezes, hands still gripping plow handle. Futures fork, safe furrows or prophetic wilds. He chooses the latter in one audacious motion, slaughters the oxen, kindles a fire with yoke wood, feeds neighbors a farewell feast flavored with destiny. When ash settles, the farmer walks away, mantle billowing behind like a promise unfurled. Years spool forward. Mentor and protege weave miracles into daily landscapes. Oil multiplied, poison stew healed, axe heads floated. Yet every lesson carries an unspoken countdown. Elijah's saga nears its final punctuation mark. One morning he rouses Elisha in Gilgal, voice hushed, "Stay here, the Lord sends me to Bethel." Elisha's answer is flint sharp. "As Yahweh lives, and as you live, I will not leave you." They trek together. At Bethel, prophet trainees whisper, "Do you know your master will be taken today?" Elisha nods, silencing them. Some knowledge aches too raw for public display. Elijah repeats the test at Jericho, "Stay." In Jordan's bank, "Stay." Every time, Elisha clings like a shadow, unwilling to lose the sun. Loyalty becomes the hinge on which legacy swings. They reach the river, no ferry in sight. Elijah folds his cloak, strikes the water, smack, and currents peel apart, revealing a path of squelching riverbed. Two prophets cross on dry ground, footprints filling instantly with pooled memory of Moses. On the far bank, Elijah pauses, breath vapor twisting in morning chill. "Ask what I shall do for you before I'm taken." Elisha's answer aims straight for the heart of inheritance, a double portion of your spirit. The elder sage's smile is equal parts pride and warning. "You've asked a difficult thing, yet if you see me when I'm taken, it will be yours." Translation: keep your eyes open. Mantles don't fall to sleepy dreamers. A sudden roar splits the stillness. Hooves without horses, wheels without axles, blazing across the horizon. A chariot of fire materializes, pulled by horses of flame. Every embernickel spoke spinning at impossible speed. Heat blasts the earth. Grasses bow as though paying homage. Elisha shields his eyes, daring not to blink. The fiery entourage barrels between master and disciple, forcing them apart like a living sword of light. No scream, no struggle, just ascension. Elijah's face is calm, eyes reflecting pure awe as the whirlwind yanks him skyward. Sand and sparks swirl together until prophet, chariot, and horses vanish in a cloud-white blaze. For a heartbeat, the sky is silent, but for the faint echo of wheels turning on celestial stone. Then something flutters down, ragged fabric glowing orange at the edges, shedding embers that hiss against sand. The mantle. Elisha rushes forward, heart slamming ribs. He snatches it before it touches ground, fingers tingling with residual heat. His mentor is gone, but legacy just fell in immortal hands. A raw cry bursts from his throat. My father, the chariots and horsemen of Israel." The sky answers with rolling thunder, not wrath, but affirmation. Purpose settles over Elisha's shoulders heavier than any ox yoke he's ever known. He turns toward the Jordan. River now swollen from yesterday's rains rushes like a living wall across his path. First gate to the new calling. He takes the mantle, folds it as Elijah did, and strikes the water. Smack! Current shudders, riverbanks quiver, water splits clean down the middle, revealing glistening stones. Prophets in training watching from Jericho gasp. The torch has officially changed hands. Crossing, he whispers a prayer equal parts gratitude and terror. Double portion. Lord, make these shoulders worthy. On the far side, disciples bow instinctively. The spirit of Elijah now rests on another. But Elisha lifts them to their feet. Work awaits, kings to anoint, widows to rescue, barren ground to heal. Elijah's whirlwind exit does more than end an era. It ignites a chain reaction reaching far beyond prophets and palaces. Generations later, fire will descend on Pentecost, echoing Carmel's blaze. Centuries after that, another lone voice, John the Baptist, will thunder in wilderness in the spirit and power of Elijah, preparing hearts for a greater visitation. Even today, every drought of faith, every altar in ruins, still waits for modern Elijahs to rebuild stones, drench hope in scarce water, and dare heaven to answer. So what's the mantle that just landed at your feet? Is it the courage to confront injustice, the faith to rebuild a broken community, the perseverance to pray until dry seasons break? Remember, God still writes his story through ordinary people who refuse to bow to counterfeit kings, people willing to run toward the next assignment even when legs tremble. If Elijah's journey lit a fire in you, hit like, smash subscribe, and share this epic with a friend who needs a spark of courage today. And don't stop here. Click on our next video, the story of Jacob, to keep the adventure rolling. Until then, keep your eyes on the clouds and your heart ready for the whisper.